Steel City. Pittsburgh is a city known for technology. In the 1800s, that looked like cutting-edge steel mills and blast furnaces. By the 1860s, Pittsburgh was leading steel production in the U.S. and absolutely booming with economic growth. This map from 1879 highlights all of the steel mills and furnaces operating along the three rivers. At the height of World War II, the Jones and Laughlin Steel Corporation, based in Pittsburgh's South Side and Hazelwood, became the fourth largest steel producer in the world. Benjamin Franklin Jones and James Laughlin became business partners in 1854, forming the American Iron Works, which later turned into a family business called the Jones and Laughlin Steel Corporation. In 1860, they built their first blast furnace named Eliza. By 1880, the J&L Steel Co. owned 20 acres of land on the south side, 98 puddling furnaces, and 30 heating furnaces. This was all made possible by the construction of the Hot Metal Bridge. Built around 1882 and then expanded in 1902, its function was to carry molten iron by train from the Eliza blast furnaces on the river's north bank to its rolling mills on the south shore. By 1934, J&L's steel production rate soared at 4.8 million tons of steel a year. But like many corporate success stories, this does not come without environmental consequences.
Pittsburgh, never been to Pittsburgh.
Pollution. Economics. They're not doing
Noise.
too good.
I have
Dirty.
I would hate to have my car break down in Pittsburgh.
I've never been to Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh is a black hole, isn't it?
Very visually ugly, very eyesore.
Cleaning up the environmental damage from the steel industry doesn't mean that we have to erase it from the landscape, but as the steel industry died out in Pittsburgh and the last of the mills closed down, it seems that we may have done exactly that. As the old mills and blast furnaces were demolished and their metal parts sold as scrap, the physical remains of an industry that defined the identity of Pittsburgh is lost.
June 1983.
The land on both sides of the river has since been redeveloped, and the legacy of Steel City has essentially disappeared from the present landscape. While a few industrial artifacts are displayed as part of an exhibit on the Three Rivers Heritage Trail, along with the occasional interpretive plaque, it's not enough. It's hard to communicate the scale and complexity of the Jones and Laughlin steel operation when it's been covered up by shiny new materials and technology centers. How can we begin to extend the civic network to include more of these lost fragments and activate a meaningful experience with these pieces of history? Pittsburgh is in its comeback era. Can we give new life to a site so rich with history by acknowledging the layers of its past? I have identified 2 industrial fragments left along the Monongahela River, which will serve as pinpoints along a new civic network. The Hot Metal Bridge and the trails will serve as the thread to connect the 2 sites. Can we reconnect with the history of the steel industry in Pittsburgh through occupying fragments of infrastructure left along the Monongahela River? The first site that I'm looking at is this steel structure that was in operation with the Eliza blast furnaces along the river. The steady flow of steam coming out of the structure supports the idea that it may have been used for some kind of pumping, either into or out of the river. The present condition of the rusted metal and warped beams is evidence of its past life. I hope to add another layer of history to these fragments and reconnect them to the network that already exists. The second site that I'm looking at are these 2 concrete masses along the south side of the river. Historic photos show them being used as docks for the barges. These types of fragments were left in place because they were not in the way of redevelopment. There is great potential for the transformation of these 2 industrial fragments. In conjunction with the Hot Metal Bridge, these sites have an undeniably strong connection to their past as part of the Jones and Laughlin Steel Corporation.